Hello, hello. Welcome to the Productive Wellbeing Show with me, your host, Abigail Barnes. On today's show, I am delighted to be joined by the amazing Darrell Evans, who is based in the US, in Vegas. And so it is early in the morning that Darrell is joining me. Darrell is the co-founder of Yokel Local. He is the host of the Mind Shift podcast. He's also the creator of the Mind Shift Business Academy. And today he joins me for a conversation all about what does well-being mean to you. So Darrell, welcome to the show. Really excited to have you on.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. As always, we always have delightful conversations, and hopefully we can share some really phenomenal insight today.
Yay, so excited. So as you're joining us on the show, please let us know where you're joining from. As I said, Darrell's joining from Las Vegas, and I am joining you from London. And we would love to know where you are. If you're watching this on replay, also let us know in the replay where you're joining from and say replay. I've got some questions for Darrell, all about what well-being means to him. If you have any questions as we go along as well, please put them in the comments and we will see if we've got time to get to them. Without further ado, let's dive straight in to the first one that I begin with all my clients. So Darrell, how do you manage your sleep?
It's a great question. Better today than I did, say, a decade ago. And so today, I typically am aiming for about 7 hours per night. And if I can give just a quick backstory, I disrespected sleep horribly in my 30s. As an entrepreneur, just after the grind, the hustle and grind, obviously 2 younger children at the time, 3 children, actually, the third came into that window as well. I just lived by a different code or a different creed. And I was still coming out of my 20s of, I played ball growing up. So being an athlete, like you're always going, you're always trying to win. And it started to wear on me in my 30s. And so changed careers. We started Yokel Local about 11 years ago or so, 10 years ago. And I just made a decision that some awareness happened. And that was a situation of poor health in terms of, and again, I wasn't in tragic health, but a little bit of high blood pressure. I was overweight, 35 pounds, and I could feel it. And that was the key. I started feeling it. And I think that was a thing that I started to become aware of, was how I felt. And so I wasn't, collapsing at the end of the day, but so I just decided to take sleep more seriously. And so I started moving towards a 7-hour night average. And then, prior to that, I was probably at 5 hours a night. So things started there. But today, typically I get to bed at between 9:30-ish and 10:30 sometimes. And I'm generally up around 5:30 to 6. One thing, though, that a few years ago that I made a decision was I decided to wake up when I was done sleeping instead of waking up with an alarm clock. I just decided I was done with an alarm clock. I was reading a book and, studying sleep. I began studying sleep a little bit and better patterns for sleep and, our sleep rhythms and the 90-minute rhythms of how we naturally go through these 90-minute clocks. And so it was interesting because about, 15 years ago, I heard a guy speak at a conference, and he said, and now he was rich and retired and wealthy and all that good stuff. So speaking from stage, it sounds easy. And he says, I don't wake up from alarm clock. I wake up when I'm done sleeping. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that when I retire. And then a few years ago, I'm just like, I'm going to do that now. I'm like, I'm not waiting until I retire because I don't really know what retirement means for me as an entrepreneur. And so I just decided, and I studied subconscious mind and how your mind, how you can tell your mind what you want to do, and your subconscious goes to work on it. So it's really interesting, and not to take this in a very esoteric spiritual direction, but if you talk to your mind and talk to yourself about what it is you want, and you don't get in the way of it, meaning you don't contradict it with your own negative thoughts, because all the thoughts would go, well, if I turn off the alarm clock, I'm going to oversleep. Or if I turn off the alarm clock, I'm going to miss a meeting. it's really not the case now. So I just basically decided, okay, well, if I turn off the alarm clock and I only want to sleep 4 hours, then that's probably going to put me in trouble for the next morning. So that's why I started backing my time up to about 7 hours. But I naturally get about 7 hours of sleep and I don't wake up with an alarm clock. So that to me today is one of my best practices. Now, if I have to catch a flight at 4 a.m., whatever, if I have an early round of golf, I'm not going to be crazy. But I wear a, Fitbit. So it just has a nice, simple vibrating. So I don't, I can't tell you last time I heard alarm bells on a phone. So that's my pattern today.
I love it. I love it. So much goodness there. I hope people are taking notes, and maybe let us know in the comments when things that Darrell says, like if you resonate with any of it, because Darrell and I have had so many conversations. Every time we speak for hours, because we've just got so much knowledge, information, books, courses, trainings, things to recommend, strategies, tools, and it just goes on and on. So we've kind of condensed this conversation for you. And this is just so interesting, because you said something right at the very beginning about how you feel. And it's something I think that we, as a society, just have been trained to ignore and are now waking up to. So can we just dive into that for a minute? How do you feel when you have woken up and you've had enough sleep, versus how do you feel if you've really burnt that midnight oil and like you've got a lot on, you've got to get up early? Do you notice this feeling? Can you articulate what that feels like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing to do when you, how do I know how I feel? Well, I started to prioritize assessing how I feel before I even get out of the bed. And it sounds subtle, but a lot of times when you're waking up with an alarm clock, whether, and again, I used to be the person who snoozed 6 or 8 times. I'm admitting to what I used to do. But now when I don't have to wake up with an alarm clock, now I just wake up when my body says wake up, my eyes open. I don't jump out of the bed unless I need to use the restroom right away. But I'm going to sit there and pause for a few minutes and just notice and just sit there and sit in it. I'm going to open my eyes. I'm going to survey the room. A lot of times there's light coming in the room. I'm glancing outside. Give me a quick look at the day and just breathe for a second and just try to feel how I feel. Today, I had a couple dreams last night that I remember waking up in the middle of the night off of a couple of dreams, and I felt a little what I call sleep. I had a little what I call dream grogginess. Is just my own word. I make stuff up. And I felt that this morning. And so that then becomes the sort of precursor of how I begin my morning routine, which maybe we'll talk a little bit about. And so it's just noticing, like, how am I breathing? How does my heart rate feel? How do I feel? Like, do I feel energized? So when I get my 7 hours, I feel fairly energized. When I get out of the bed, I'm ready to go. There's nothing that I'm ready to go. When I feel a little groggy, I have to take a few minutes and I can feel the difference. And it's not tremendous difference, but it's just subtle. And I think a lot of times when we get that subtle feeling and we ignore it, and then we let that pile on. Look, if I go back 10 years ago when I had high blood pressure, I ignored the feeling. My body told me I had high blood pressure. I didn't need a machine or a doctor to confirm it. I could tell. I was stressed. My energy was weird. I could feel some sort of tension. And I'm not trying to pretend I know my body, but I think everybody does if you really pay attention. I knew I knew something was wrong. So when I saw the blood pressure reading, which wasn't ridiculous, it was like 140 over whatever, but it was in that pre-hypertension level. I knew it. And then I ignored it. And I waited another 90 days feeling the same stupid way. And then I went back and got another check and it was the same. And I had changed no patterns, right? And then I waited another 3 months. And then finally it was like, dude, you don't feel that good. I mean, I wasn't feeling tragic, but I was like, you don't feel that good. Do something about it. And I think that's where we err in our human experience sometimes, is we know we don't feel good. And yet we keep going along the path, and then it ends up in some crazy place, which hopefully, none of our listening audience has had happen, but we also hear the stories. And so I'm very conscious of that feeling first thing in the morning.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sort of clarifying that a little bit more, because I think it is so important that people hear this and then become the scientist and the observer of their own life. Like, how do you feel? And I know for myself, if I've had 30 minutes less sleep, I don't feel like my mind is as sharp. I'm a little bit slow. And then the first thought I have is I should have a coffee, where this isn't my first thought every morning. My first thought every morning is I should have my TikTok green tea, which is decaffeinated. And that's always my first drink of the day. And then I have the coffee after that, because once I start to need a stimulant,
Yes.
then I'm noticing that there's something out, and sleep is free.
Exactly.
Sleep is available, and
Right.
not to hammer home the point to people, but it starts with your sleep. Like, it is a superpower for a reason. So we are going to move on to the next question. Hopefully this has inspired somebody, and this is what they needed to hear. Go to bed 15 minutes earlier tonight and get that sleep back on track. So next question. How do you manage your time when it comes to your relationships? And perhaps at this stage, we should mention that you are a big fan of your diary. So are you calendaring everything in there?
Yeah, I mean, the question is it is probably the toughest question for me as an entrepreneur. Um, you know, Managing time in the world of entrepreneurship, in the world of all the multiple projects, in the world of relationships with your, loved ones, your children, your friendships, your significant others. It is the balancing act. But yes, the answer is yes. I use a calendar religiously. I would likely miss anything that wasn't on my calendar, because if I leave it to my brain to remember where I've got to be, what I've got to do I can be in 6 different places in one business day, meaning I can have 6 different meanings for my mind or objectives for what I have to lead a conversation or be a part of a conversation. And it's just difficult on your mind to jump in and out of those various initiatives. And when it comes to relationships, it is calendar. Date nights get calendared. Time with the family gets calendared. In fact, if I open my calendar right now, you will see I have a slot that says dinner with family. And it wasn't always this way. And even though I don't have to know that every day at 5:00 we're having dinner, but it is to let anyone who's managing my calendar or looking at my calendar, my team, know that we don't meet at 5:00. I'm with my family from 5 till 7. I'll check. That means I'm not checking email. It means we're not scheduling any meetings at 4:00 because I'm the cook in my house, and I'm cooking a lot of times through the week. So, I'm shutting it off at 3:30, 4:00 so I can get ready for dinner, because I really enjoy cooking. But yeah, I do live by the calendar, and here's the reason why. I've been doing this now 20 years, and I learned, again, back to a little bit of the human brain studying, and your brain can't remember everything. It's not the job of the brain is not to remember everything. You're not supposed to give it a job to do. And if you put it over on a calendar, it'll remind you when you have to do it. A lot of times we pick up a lot of mental weariness, and we talk about sleep, getting that physical well-being back, but are we treating our brain the same way? Or are we asking our brain to do far more? It's not that it's not capable, but you're setting yourself up for failure if you have to remember. How many times have your listening audience, and if you're listening to this, how many times have you laid down to go to bed at 9:30 and you can't shut your brain off because, you forgot to call Fred, you forgot to send the email back to Susan, you've got to get this project done by 9 a.m. in the morning, and you knew you were supposed to finish the outline and you didn't, and you're like thinking, and then you're thinking, okay, maybe I'll just wake up a little early. I mean, that energy on your mental energy is draining your physical energy as well. And so get it on a calendar. Get it on a calendar. If you open my calendar, I've got my morning routine on my calendar. I've got my free time on my calendar. I've got my workout on my calendar. I've got my date nights and or family events, birthdays, dinner, and workouts. I think I said workouts already. And then my work day is in there, right? So a lot of people just use the calendar for their work day. I use it for everything. And if I have to take my daughter to work, it's on the calendar. If I have to pick her up, it's on the calendar. It's not like I don't know I got to pick her up. She's just got her 16. She just got her driver's license. So maybe I'll be exonerated from that duty here in the near future.
Maybe she'll be picking you up now.
Who knows? So yeah, it helps your brain not to have to remember everything. Let the calendar remind you.
Yeah, I love this. This is such a great recommendation as well. And something that I picked up from Darrell from our previous conversations. by the way, if you're resonating with anything Darrell is saying, I've had Darrell on the show before. And if you go to my YouTube account and you just search Darrell Evans, you will be able to find previous episodes where he's talked about all of these things in more detail. Darrell is kind of like my go-to guru, almost like a business mentor, if you like, that I ask for stuff on the basis that we both have the same sort of interests, and we both invest in ourselves with the same teachers, trainers, and understand it. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I've also I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I've implemented this now in my own Google Calendar, and I have different colors. So my work time is one color. My out of work time is another color. And if I'm doing an interview or being recorded, that's in red, just to remind me, like, you need to be camera ready for this one, or what have you. Right. But yeah, I think we should do a calendar kind of comparison session.
Unfortunately, mine is all the same color. I don't get that fancy. That's the other thing too. For me, it's easier just to keep it simple. It's all the same color. And the reason I also do that is I'm also big about white space on the calendar. The white space on the calendar means there's time when I can decompress from a meeting. I try not to be back to back with meetings, if at least not more than a couple of hours. So if I'm doing a couple of half-hour meetings or a couple of hour meetings, I try to make sure that I've got some time to stretch, get up, take a break. So I try not to run back to back to back all day. And so white space on the calendar is important. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs fail to give themselves purposeful white space on the calendar. And that's maybe just to think, maybe it's to stretch, maybe it's to take a walk and come out of a challenging situation. That's the life of an entrepreneur. You're dealing with, if you're a good entrepreneur, you're putting out fire a lot. It sounds all crazy that, oh, we're doing all this fancy revenue and all this stuff. But a lot of times you're putting out fires, and putting out fires is energy. And sometimes entrepreneurs don't give themselves enough white space on the calendar. And some of that is short breaks. Some of it is vacation. Some of it is weekend trips, but that white space is important so that you can reset.
Awesome. So I know some of our audience, they manage diaries for other people. Do you have people that sort of put things in your diary, manage your diary? How do you interact with them? If you do, have you sort of got this is how I like it to be, keep this white space?
My executive assistant knows what I like on the calendar. We just hired a new executive assistant, and she knows what my calendar structure is, but she doesn't control the calendar. Today, believe it or not, with the use of our calendar links, where we send out these automated links, I can set that up so that it doesn't. So if someone wants to book a meeting with me and we've had a conversation, I'm going to send them a link to my calendar. So that way I don't have to play phone tag and voicemail tag. That's another productivity hack. If you're listening to this and you don't use some sort of calendaring system where someone, I don't know how many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, I'm tired of playing phone tag and voicemail tag. Hey, Abigail, are you available at Tuesday at 12? And you write back, no, I'm available Friday at 10. I'm like, well, I can't do Friday at 10, but can you do Friday at 3? And then you're 7 hours ahead of me. And then next thing you know, it's Saturday. I just got tired of it. So I bought a calendar system and I send a link and you can see what's available. But here's the trick. Inside the settings of the calendar, I've got a buffer window, which means if you book at 10, no one else can book until 11:30. So now I've got that 30-minute or hour window for our meeting, and then I get an automatic 30-minute break. So you set buffers around the calendar. So that is, it has worked. It has just worked beautifully for the last 4 or 5 years.
I love it. I love it. I couldn't live without my calendar link, actually. Just even as you're describing that, I'm thinking, and now we're so global, and then people are like, and which time zone is that? PDT, right. PST, EST, AEDT, and you're just
AEDT, like, right.
This is just ridiculous. And so then you could link it to your streaming system. So then like everything is set up, your Zoom link is in there, whatever you're using, it's all done. So scheduling is just incredible, and it's elevating everybody so that they can bring the most value to the roles that they do. If technology can do certain things, then we can always add more value in the other roles. And we've got some interesting people in the house with us. We've got Minneapolis. We have got Hettel is saying she's loving time boxing. We've got Danita, who is saying scheduling, calendar links for sure. And people are really resonating with this white space of yours, taking time to refocus in between meetings. So this is really hitting home for people. I love it.
I'm glad. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Glad you're enjoying it.
Amazing. Next question then. What is your work well-being routine? Do you have one? Is it literally, it's 9 o'clock, head down all day, and then it gets to 5 o'clock and the bell goes and you're out? Or do you have some sort of well-being routine throughout the day?
Well, so from a well-being routine, I think it starts with, again, after I wake up. So well-being for me in the day starts with a morning routine that can range between 20 to 30 minutes, maybe 35, 40 minutes, depending on the day and how I feel. And inside of that morning routine, there's, first thing out of the bed is 16 ounces of water. I'm now going to go read, meditate. I'll be stretching my body, praying, maybe some journaling. I don't open email. I don't open email for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours after I wake up. So if I'm waking up at 5:30 to 6, the email is not going to be seen until 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'm not going to let someone else's invitation into my mind. Maybe I need to do something, but the minute I open the email, I'm now in someone else's agenda. And I might be needed to be in their agenda, but the minute I get into that rat race, it's hard to get pulled out of it. So my work routine starts after 7:30 or so. And from there, it can vary between, I'm usually, I give myself little 10-minute to 15-minute blocks to process my email. I'm not going to be an email long. I can assure you that. I just learned it years ago. I'm not going to be an email all day. I only open email 3 times or so per day. And it's, around that 7:30 or maybe 8 o'clock time. I'll open it again a midday, 11 to 12. I'll open it again before I shut it down around 3 or 4. And I'm looking to process what needs to be processed that requires me to do it. If I don't have to do it, then I send it where it needs to go in our project management system. So I'm in and out of email fairly quickly. But as far as work well-being, again, I do believe that those buffer windows, those white space, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, where I'm getting up, I'm taking a walk, I'm getting some water, I make sure I eat lunch, and I don't have a set lunch schedule, but I just try to make sure that as I process the day, I also try to make sure that I don't overwhelm myself through the weeks. Now, there's certain weeks I can't get away from it. Certain weeks are just ferocious. Like one week I had 38 meetings. And part of that was just the first of the month, I meet with each one of my key team members. So there's 8 meetings on one day. Like that's kind of silly, right? And then I ended up with 5 podcasts. I mean, it was a crazy week. I let that week get away from me, but that's not a typical week. Then the very next week, I think I had 6 meetings for the entire week. So it's that workday well-being is kind of an ebb and flow, but, and there are certain projects that are mentally draining because they stretch me maybe outside of my unique gifts, but they have to get done in my business. And, but yeah, it's kind of an ebb and flow. But again, I'm always mindful of how I feel. Like I can tell when I've been working out of my unique gift for too long, and I can feel it. I can feel it towards the middle of the afternoon. I can feel it into the evening. And then I just step back and say, okay, what was I doing today that pushed me or pulled me out of my unique specialty? And maybe I have to do it, but being mindful of that weariness as a result of being outside of your unique gift. I always say, you've heard me say this probably before, I say it on the podcast, that we all have a superstar DNA, a superstar definite natural ability. And that natural ability comes with ease. Doesn't mean you don't have to learn it and work at it, but there's a rhythm to that work. And a lot of times we get forced to do work that's not a part of that DNA of our core body. It's a stress. For example, me doing graphic design in my work is a strain for me. And it sounds silly. Me editing, working on big Excel spreadsheets, it's a strain for me. I can do it, but it takes a little bit more energy versus having a conversation with Abigail Barnes on the Productive Wellbeing Show. This is easy. Like this is in my DNA. I don't have any problem or stress with this. So there's
amazing.
We just have to understand how our body feels.
Amazing. And this conversation could go on forever, but we're coming to my final 2 questions. So what is one thing that you do today in work or life that you didn't used to do when it comes to well-being? What's sort of
Oh.
one thing, and not what would you, and then I'll tell you my final question just so that you can get them clear in your head. What wellbeing advice would you give to 20-year-old Darrell? So what's one thing you do today that you didn't do in the past, and what's one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
So the thing I do, I mean, we've talked about a number of things I do today that maybe I didn't do a while ago. I'm trying to think of one that is added to that. I would say that the one thing I do today, whenever I'm faced with something that maybe is pulling me out of sync of rhythm of well-being, is I ask, is it possible to not feel like this? Is it possible I could feel better? Is it possible that I don't have to feel the strain in my lower back? I used to have a lot of lower back challenges because I've been sitting at a desk for 30-ish years, 20 something years. And I started developing low back pain. And I started saying, so one day I was just like, well, is it possible that I don't have to have this low back pain? And so I started researching, and it led me to stretching. It led me to lower hip exercises. And all of a sudden I don't have low back pain anymore. So I guess the thing that I do today is very conscious of asking myself, is it possible that I can feel a different way, which is what I want? And so that's a key thing. It's not really a technical thing, but it leads you to the area of possibility, and it allows you to go research remedies to your current situation, whatever that may be. What advice would I give my 20-year-old self? I would tell you to be patient. I would have told myself, be patient. You've got plenty of time. There's two things I would say. Be patient. You got plenty of time. I used to always think time was going to run out for some reason. I used to always think the world was going to end if I didn't get it done now. And that's what led me to these behaviors in my 20s and early 30s, like go, 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 go. Like what? Like I had a scarce mentality of the life we live. And granted, we all could be here. We could not be here tomorrow. I ask this question to my show guests every time. If you weren't going to be here tomorrow for some reason, what would you want the people to know you for? But in my 20s, I lived under this, it's going to end soon mentality. And I just would have changed that. The other piece of advice would have been to believe in myself sooner in my entrepreneurial journey. And so those are the couple pieces of advice. I think having belief in yourself is key.
These are such top tips, and this has been such a fabulous conversation. I can't believe how fast the time has flown. And as I said, if you resonated with anything Darrell has shared today, there are more interviews with him on my YouTube channel, Abigail Barnes, which you can go and check out. Now, Darrell, where can we connect with you? Where is the best place for us to find out more about the work that you are doing?
Two places. You can find me at darrellevans.net. That's kind of the home of my personal world. And then I'd love for your audience, if they're interested, to listen to the Mindshift podcast. The Mindshift podcast, I interview every week exciting and phenomenal entrepreneurs like yourself, Abigail. Got your episode coming up here in a couple of weeks. And we talk about the road between inspiration and realization, and when life knocks us down, from breakdown to breakthrough. I'm pulling real stories, real strategies that'll hopefully help our listeners find real success through the lives and experiences of others. And it's a super fun project for me. And so that would be great. If you can look up the Mindshift podcast and become a listener or subscriber, let us know what you think. That would be a great place to find me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fabulous. We're so blessed. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, keep washing your hands, and I will see you on another episode. Thanks, Darrell.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Abigail.